Hi, so today I'll be going through how to set up a fxcored mainnet validator. And yeah, so let's get started. So welcome everyone from all parts of the globe, whether you are from, good morning, good afternoon, or good evening. Let me just close this. All right, so the session today would be, to teach anyone who wants to be a validator on our mainnet. And for those who have already set up your validators on the mainnet, I'll be going through some tips and tricks, as well as, covering some parts of the documentation so that, and also answering some of your questions. So the structure of the YouTube video and the time would be that I'll have about 15 minutes to do an intro, 20 minutes to set up, the necessary requirements, like especially your fxcored, and then 40 minutes of unpacking the data folder because I'll be using the snapshot guide, and another 15 minutes to create a validator. So all in all, it'll take about 1.5 hours. So please keep your questions only after the session is over. Okay, so let me just show you how you can be part of our ecosystem and how you can join our network. Okay, so just search for function X. All right, so this will bring you to our function X main page. And this is where, you can get all your answers, your FAQ, our developer Gitbook, and also have access to our Explorer. So if you click into community, you can see that we are very active in all these kind of social media outlets. Okay, Medium, Twitter, Discord, Gitbook. Now, if you click into our forum, okay, so let's say this is where, you can get any kind of help, any kind of technical help, get updates, as well as any kind of information with regards to anything related to function X. And as you can see here, I have actually spun up 3 threads. So a general discussion on mainnet, an update on mainnet validator, as well as mainnet validator bugs and fixes. So let's just click into each one of them. So our team and me, we are quite responsive on the forum, as well as, other social media outlets. So, and also, community members, especially validators, right? They are also very helpful, as you would probably see later. So this is where all the general inquiries and discussion are held. So anything logical based with regards to validator, you can find here. And for validator updates, this is where we'll be pushing out, upgrades in the code, any changes in governance protocols, all here as well. And finally, this is where, you can have a technical support and bug fixes, with regards to mainnet validation. Yeah, so, you can find us on Telegram as well. And also, search for any kind of tutorial on YouTube. And of course, this video will be up on YouTube as well. And this is where, we have a lot of articles written on Medium. So as you can see, we have a monthly hash out, and we also have tutorials, and information in between, within a month. Okay, so let's jump right to September function hash out. So this is where, okay, let's just translate to English. This is where there's a general information about validators. Okay, so if you don't already know, function X or fxcored is built on Cosmos SDK, and we are running a DPoS consensus mechanism, which is delegated proof of stake. So if you can refer to this diagram over here, what happens is that we have a lot of delegators, and each delegator will then stake with a validator, and then the validator will gain weight in the system. So the more number of FX staked with a validator, the higher his voting rights is, and the higher is his chance of proposing a block. Okay, so we can move on to Twitter. This is where you find all the information and updates on FunctionX. And also do check out our Discord. And you can make any kind of contributions to our GitHub as well. There's the FAQ, where you can raise any kind of questions. And there's the Explorer as well. So the Explorer is where you can find information about the chain. So what are the transactions, what's the latest transaction? And you can find your validators here as well. So as it is, there's about, I think 6 or 7 public validators and 3 institutional validators right now. And you also can, make proposals on this through our FunctionX Explorer. And lastly, I think, if you are always on the go, do download our FX wallet, because I think it's very well made. And this will be a UI. I mean, it's not necessary to be a validator, but I would say it is highly recommended, because this will be used. I mean, there's a very nice UI for you to interact with our blockchain through FX wallet. Okay, so without further ado, let's jump right into developer. So this will bring you to our technical document page. And we can start. So today I will be going through this technical setup. I honestly don't think it's very difficult. And I think impossible, nothing is impossible, especially if you see Harry Maguire still wearing the Manchester United armband. So we'll be going through a step-by-step summary of how to set up a mainnet validator. So first up, we'll be installing fxcored and the prerequisites, so MIC and GCC. Then we'll be setting up your node. So initializing the fxcored. And at this stage, after that, make sure that you back up your consensus key. I'll show you how to do that as well. And before starting the node, I think this is highly recommended as well. So download the snapshot. So what this does is that it actually downloads the snapshot up until the time that, the last snapshot that was made of the blockchain, so that you can do a much faster sync, right? And also we'll be covering how to run the server as a daemon. Okay, so this is very important, or rather highly recommended, so that it's a more stable setup for fxcored. And setting up, your validator. So make sure that your catching up is false, which is you're fully synced up. And we'll be covering how to use Ledger, and also having added security of, keyring backend flag that, has an added security measure for your keys, because this is very important. And of course, do make sure that you perform all the necessary checks before you create your validator. And do set up a node monitoring device, which I'll run through later as well. And also, set up a Sentry node that will prevent a DDoS attack. And then you can create your validator. So just to answer some of your queries about, FX Cloud, right? Why we have shifted focus from FX Cloud to setting up like an independent, having like an independent and more technical setup for fxcore is that basically fxcore is a hub, right? And then it'll be connected to all the chains in the future. So this fxcore network has to be very stable and very secure. So having like an independent setup, basically having a different region in which your cloud is set up in, or having different cloud providers and owning the code, okay, owning the repo, and then having different keys, different accounts. All this creates a very decentralized and independent setup for all the validators in the ecosystem. So what that does is that if an attacker wants to attack one node, he can't simply just replicate that attack on all the other validators and take all down at the same time. So having an independent setup does ensure security for our network. So before I move on, what I'll be doing today is that, or rather what I'll be telling you is that the environment that I'm using is actually a Mac, but also I'll be remoting into a cloud instance which is has the OS of Ubuntu. All right. So yeah, let's get started with installation of fxcore. So make sure that you have fulfilled the necessary hardware requirements, which is 2 CPU, 500 gig of disk storage, 4 gig of RAM, and at least 10 Mbps of network bandwidth. So yeah, since I will be setting up via cloud, let me just pull my screen over and I'll click into it. Okay, you can either do a simple SSH or you can do SSH forwarding, remote forwarding. So this one later I'll show you, because if let's say you want to use a ledger, all right, you have to have fxcore installed on your local machine, or rather on the machine that has Ledger Live or that your ledger is connected to. So if let's say you are remoting into a remote server, that remote server wouldn't be able to have, let's say, Ledger Live installed. So I will use this forward remoting method. So let's just remote in. All right, so let me just key in my password. Oh. Okay, so we are in. All right. Yeah, let's go back to installation of fxcore. Okay, so I'm using Ubuntu environment. So as you can see as well, I'm using Ali Cloud Service. So I mean, you can choose whichever cloud service that you trust or you prefer. Okay. Some of my team uses AWS as well, and even Huawei Cloud. So just to let you know as well, like okay, so what this command does is that it updates all the packages. Okay, so what I just want to explain before moving on is that fxcore is actually system agnostic. So you can set it up on Mac or Windows. It really doesn't matter, but I'll prefer Ubuntu. Okay, so once that's done, these are just the prerequisites. Okay, that's fast. So install make and GCC, so your shell commands and your compiler. Okay, so then you have to install Go. So all other environments, you can choose to install here, or in this case, I'll be remoting into my terminal. So what I'll do is that I'll wget this. So what this does is download Go. Just make sure that your Go version here matches the one that you'll be unpacking later. Okay, so once this, let's just check. Okay, so I have it here. Then I'll be moving on to step 2 of this official docs. Okay, so now that I've already downloaded it, okay, go install. So step 2, choose the operating system that you're using. So mine will be Linux. So what this command does is that it removes any existing Go directories and Go versions in your machine and unpacks the file. Okay, so exporting the path, and yeah, let's just check whether we have our Go version installed. Okay, so you can see here, our Go is installed. Okay, you can close this. Okay, just make sure that your Go version is later than 1.16. Okay, if not, it wouldn't work. Okay, now moving on to setting up your system environments. Okay, so this is just to make sure that the terminal knows where to find your Go path. Okay, so now that we have everything done, let's git clone the repo. Okay, so this is actually cloning our fxcored repo. So for those of you who are not familiar with Git, okay, yeah, just to let you know, this is a live session, so I may make mistakes here and there. So for you, those of you who are unfamiliar with Git, basically, you need to know where your .git file is stored. So yeah, I mean, later on when there's any code upgrade, you have to go into this folder that has your .git folder and git pull and then reinstall or upgrade the code. Okay, so let's just wait until it's installed. Okay. Okay, so that's installed. Now let's clone the repo again, just to make sure. Okay, so I see fxcored inside. So let's just cd into fxcored. Okay, make go sum. All right, so this would yeah, you run some shell commands. And as you can see here, it's denoted here testnet and mainnet. So yeah, I mean, along the way when you see the code, obviously today we'll be installing mainnet. So I mean, if you choose to install testnet, you can install it over here. Right, so let's install fxcored for mainnet. Okay, so while this is going through, let me just run you through a bit of the document. Yeah, this is basically a summary of what the document is. I'll be going through the technical run through of installing fxcored, which we just did, and then setting up the node. Okay, all these are technical details. And this part is actually where most of your answers will be found. Okay, so we have the validator overview, which is a general overview of all the validator information. setting up of a validator for fxcored. So that's a technical setup. Validator recovery is also technical. And then there's validator FAQ. So validator FAQ is where all the information that you need, logical information, and about our validator as well as our entire blockchain is. So things like, what is a full node? What is a validator? What's the difference between a delegator and a validator? Some of the responsibilities of a validator, as well as, our enterprise incentives, okay? And also, what are the slashing conditions? I'll run through all of this later with you. And then there's the validator security notice. So there's key management and, sentry node, which is very important as well, because that prevents you from a DDoS attack. Okay, and then also, your node setup. Your node monitoring setup, which I will go through as well. Oh, okay, so we're done. So just to make sure that everything is set up correctly, fxcored version. Okay, cored version long. Okay, so we have fxcored installed. All right. So now let's, you can choose to install via a Docker method, but today I'll be going through the binaries method. Okay, so let's say, let me just go into, all right. Okay, so fxcored is actually a daemon and is very similar to Geth, Go Ethereum. Yeah, okay, so as you can see, this is a tree structure. So let me just fxcored. Yeah, so fxcored is actually also a command line interface. So once you've installed it, you can actually interact with our blockchain. Okay, if you add the node flag as well, you can send transactions. Or if you are already a full node or validator, you can do it yourself. All right, so I've initialized the call. Okay, and as you can see, this is the, yeah, so I've initialized the call and you can see this is a tree structure of the .fxcored folder. So what we'll do next is that we'll be overriding this file, the genesis, the config, and the app.toml files. Okay, so once you've already initialized the call, you have this validator key.json file, and this JSON file is actually your consensus private key. So don't ever lose this, or don't show anyone this, because this is basically your validator's identity. Okay, so let's just run this. Okay, so now we've already override those files. Okay, at this stage, before starting the node, oh wait, sorry, let's move on to this. Okay, so yeah, so validator recovery, right? Remember I was talking to you about privkey.json file. So when you cat this file, I wouldn't cat it now because I'm live, so I don't want to get hacked. Yeah, so if you cat this file, actually it will show you this. All right, this is actually your private key. Okay, so do make sure that you store a backup with this. I think some of you, I think there was one validator actually that override this file without having a backup, and yeah, basically he had to go offline, right? And he was jailed. So just make sure that you keep this very secure and that you back it up. All right. So whenever you initialize the steps again, so let's just go back. So after you initialize this, if let's say it's a new machine, but you want to port over your validator, what you do is that you can, after, or before you grab and overwrite all these files, you can actually, cat, as in overwrite this file into this privkey.json file. Let me show you. Yeah. And you have the consensus key of your original validator that you want to recover. All right. Okay, so yeah, so we'll try the snapshot guide. Okay, so this will actually be a much faster sync. Okay, let's just cd into root. Okay, so it's downloading. Okay, it's taking quite a bit of time. Yeah, so just an explanation of what the snapshot does is that, like I said before, our team actually creates a snapshot of the blockchain data every Monday at 2 a.m. UTC. Okay, and basically what this does is that it you download the data. I mean, you unpack it, you'll be unpacking it later into this data folder here. So that's where, is it running? Oh no, I think it's not running. Yeah, you basically unpack it into this data folder. Hold on. Let me just check. Oh, right. Okay, never mind. Sorry, there's a bit of technical difficulties. Okay, so let's just redo that step. Okay, so now it's downloading. Okay, so while we wait for it to download finish, I'll run you through the document. Yeah, so we stopped at monitoring device. So Prometheus matrix. Later, I'll show you how you can actually set this up and how it'll look like. And for node peers, these are actually the trustable node peers that the company actually provides. So for mainnet, as well as testnet over here. So for those of you who don't know what Delegators is, any future testnets are usually named after Singapore metro stations. Okay, so just a fun fact. And for live upgrade, so this will be very important, especially when there's any upgrade in code. So what happens is that if a governance goes through where you need to perform an upgrade in code, yeah, this is where you find your answers and tutorial 4. Okay, so remember what I said before about going into the folder fx-core folder so that you can git pull and then make go sum and make install, and then you'll be able to upgrade your code. All right, so validator overview, I will already explain what it is. Setting up validator for fxcored. So this and validator recovery, they're both technical documents, which we will double back on later. So I will run through what validator FAQ is. So this is very important for those who are aspiring validators as well as any existing validators. Okay, I'm going to teach you how to fish for your answers. So everything that is any logical explanations about function X or rather fxcored blockchain as well as validators can be found here. So things like what is a validator? Basically, a validator is on top of validating blocks and transactions. You also, one thing that's very important is that you also partake in or rather participate in governance. All right, so what is staking? So in this case, this staking is not like your Uniswap v3 or Uniswap v2 kind of staking. This is actually protocol staking. So when you stake with a validator, what happens is that the validator actually gains weight. So think of it like like a voting system. If you put FX, the more FX the validator has, the more weight it has in the system. And having more weight in the system means the validator has a higher chance of proposing a block and also a higher chance, or rather more weight in any kind of governance proposal. Okay, and to mention that a delegator who delegates with a validator, the validator actually gets to vote on behalf of the delegator if the delegator does not vote. Okay, but the delegator has the right to override the validator's vote. Okay, right now we only have 50 in the active validator set. So more on that I'll explain later. So what is a full node? Okay, a full node is is just one shot of being a validator. So basically you have the entire blockchain of information. So you can run queries, use through a full node. What is a delegator? So as I've mentioned already, delegators are basically anyone who has FX, and their role is basically to delegate to a validator that they think is trustworthy and also to participate in governance. How do you become a validator? All right, so there are a couple of key fields or parameters here that is very important for validator when you create your validator. So later I'll go through all of them with you. But yeah, just to note. So validator's public key, validator's address, and validator's name or moniker, as you can see in the Explorer just now, like Cogni or Nami, right? And then your validator's website. So this is where you can find more information, like a kind of like a resume or CV of the validator, and validator's description. Okay, so coming to the most important part. Okay, initial commission rate. Your initial commission rate can be edited even after you created the validator, but based on these parameters later that you can't change, which is the maximum commission and the commission max change rate. Okay, so what the commission rate is actually a validator's take on the revenue stream. So before the revenue gets distributed to all the delegators, what a validator does is it charges a commission on that revenue before it gets distributed to the delegators. So more on this will be explained below. And yeah, so max commission. So this parameter can't be changed. Okay, so let's say most of it, the default is actually 20%. So at any point in time, your validator cannot increase his commission rate past 20% if he sets it at 20%. So these are one of the key criteria as a delegator to choose amongst all the validators, because obviously you don't want a validator that takes pretty much all your money, right? So commission max rate change, the default I think is 1%. So let's say the initial commission right now is, most of the validators is 1%, right? So if let's say the default for this is 1% as well, in any day you only can increase your commission rate by 1%. Okay, minimum self-delegation. Okay, our blockchain actually specifies that only 100 FX min self-delegation for any aspiring validator. Okay, but you can actually edit this field and raise the amount so that more delegators will know that you have more skin in the game. Okay, because if the self-delegation falls below this min self-delegation limit, every delegator will unbond from this validator and he will move into the inactive validator set. Right. So it's running at 21 minutes now. So I've got to do a lot more explanation for this finish syncing. All right, so back to the active validator set. As you would know, right, we've actually increased the max validator capacity, active validator capacity from 20 to 50. So a lot of people ask like, is it 100 FX, how much to stay being active, in a validator set? So the answer is actually, yes, you need 100 FX minimum self-delegation. That's one requirement. And the other requirement that to be an active validator is that, let's say there are currently 51 validators in the ecosystem right now. Okay, if you want to be in a top 50 or within the active validator set, you have to be ranked in terms of the most total amount of FX staked. So if let's say the 50th validator has 1,000 total FX staked. Okay, the 51st guy who has only 999 will just lose out by 1, or rather 2 FX. So if he pushes himself up to, if he delegates 2 more FX, then he'll kick that 50th guy out, and that 50th guy will now become an inactive validator. So how can I join the testnet? Okay, so this is very important for any aspiring validators, because it's like a sandbox, right? So if you haven't already joined us for the testnet phase, I think a lot of the current validators have been with us throughout, so they'll know the ins and outs and of the validator and what issues there could be. So I think quite a number of the current mainnet validators have gone through quite a lot of issues with me. So we grow and we learn and we troubleshoot and strengthen our ecosystem even more. Okay, so for anyone who wants to be a mainnet validator, I think it's very important to join the testnet first. Okay, so what are the different types of keys? As you already seen just now, the operator key is basically tagged on to the priv validator key.json file, and the corresponding public address and the public key can be found here and running this command. And then you have your account key. So this is very important as well, because is a irreversible transaction or irreversible command later when you bond this account key to your validator's consensus key. All right, so bear in mind, like let's say, if you want to change your wallet address that's tagged onto this consensus key after you've created your validator, that won't be possible. Okay, you have to create an entirely new validator for that. Okay, so this is a non-editable field later when you bind your when you create your validator and when you bind your account key to the operator's key. So what are the different states a validator can be in? Okay, you have your active validator set, jail and inactive. So I think some of you have questions on this. So as I already explained, the difference between active and inactive. So right now, the active validator set is set as 50. So within that 50, or rather in the entire ecosystem, is based on competition, right? Based on how much total FX is staked with a particular validator. And yeah, so we've come to the jail part of it. So if any validator misbehaves in the ecosystem, he'll be jailed. I'll go through the jailing and slashing requirements or conditions later. So you can actually run the unjail transaction in order to re-enter the active validator set. Okay, but jailing due to double signing, right? You can't unjail your validator. So always be careful. One other question that I have in the forum before as well is that there's a very good contingency plan out there where you have a validator and also you have a node that's already synced up. Okay, just make sure that that node that's already synced up and the validator does not share the same private key.json file. Okay, if you have that same file, it would actually either confuse the system or it actually would constitute in double signing. So once again, if you want to carry out that contingency plan, make sure that you try out in the testnet phase as well. So what is self-delegation? As I already mentioned, and also minimum self-delegation is 100 FX. All right, so how will delegators choose their validators? Okay, there are a couple of criterion. It's just like, how do you prevent or check for a rug pull? Okay, these are certain guidelines or advice or tips to take note of before you actually delegate with a validator. Okay, so the amount of self-delegated FX. Obviously, if a validator has more self-delegated FX, then if he also if he misbehaves, right, he will also lose quite a bit due to slashing. Okay, so that is one criterion. Total amount of delegated FX. Obviously, in an ecosystem where it's decentralized and there's freedom of speech or whatnot. If a validator has a good track record, or the commission rate is very low, then usually there will be more delegated FX. Okay, so these are all like game theory. Yeah, so commission rate. Obviously, you want to choose a validator with the lowest commission rate and also having a good track record. So if a validator always goes offline or he misses blocks, okay, that is one way of filtering out which validator you would delegate to. Okay, so some of the responsibilities of a validator, as I mentioned earlier, is actually being an active participant in our governance. So let me just spin up FunctionX Explorer. All right. So just to show you proposals. Okay, just to show you, here are some of the proposals that actually went through. And as I mentioned earlier, as a validator, you need to vote and vote on behalf of your delegators, right? Yeah. Okay, so you can actually run, okay, you can actually create a governance protocol through the fxcored CLI later. Later I'll show you how to do it. Okay, validators need not need to be identified publicly. And here are some of the responsibilities which I've already mentioned, which is active participation in governance, as well as making sure that all your keys are stored correctly, so that not only secures your own validators, but also secures the network. Okay, and being able to run the correct version and more stable version of our fxcored repo. Okay, so what is participating in active governance entail? Okay, I'll just gloss over this point. Right, so just to mention, there are a lot of questions on, what's this 3-week bonding, unbonding period, and how you can actually redelegate to other validators. So this is very important to our ecosystem now, especially, since we've just launched mainnet for the public. So we will actually want the public, to redelegate their FX to the public validators. So just a point on that, redelegation actually does not, there are two types of, I would say, transactions in this case, when you unstake. So basically there's the unbonding and there's the redelegation. So if you unbond, that means you are totally, or rather you're taking all your FX away from any validator. So that will have a 3-week kind of lockout period. So within, what happens is actually you send a request to the system, and the system will only allow you to unbond after 3 weeks. And during that time, your FX will still be staked with that particular validator. And you will earn the rewards, and you're also subjected to any kind of slashing conditions if the validator actually misbehaves. So redelegation actually works in a way that, if you want to redelegate to any other validator, so your FX is still being staked, but just a different validator, you actually do not, you're not subjected to this 3 weeks unbonding period. All right. So, but there are obviously limits to that, which I would show you as well. So I've shown, or rather I've answered some people on the forum showing an article, that really clearly explains this. Okay. Can a validator run away with their delegators FX? The answer is just no. How often a validator will be chosen to propose the next block? As I already mentioned, it is based on the weight. So let's say one particular validator has 10% of the entire FX in the ecosystem, right? Okay, so that's actually quite substantial. So in that case, you will have roughly about 10% chance of proposing blocks and earning block rewards. Okay, so now eye on the prize, the incentives for a validator. Okay, so unlike Squid Game, you're actually you're not putting your life at stake here. So there are essentially two types, different types of revenue, block rewards as well as transaction fees. So block rewards, as we mentioned earlier, is based on the weight of a validator, and he's able to propose blocks. And then, there's also transaction fees that you can earn as a validator. Okay, so whenever you clear or validate a transaction, like if let's say you want to do a send transaction, you actually pay a bit of gas, and this gas actually goes to the validator to confirm the transaction. Okay. So what is the incentive to run? Oh, skip this. Let's skip this as well. Yeah. All right. So I'll explain to you how block rewards are distributed as well as transaction fees. So let's say there are 10 validators, right? And the block reward is 1000 FX. And each of the validator has 1% commission. And each of them as well have 20% self-bonded FX. So in that case, a validator gets, or rather the commission is 100 times 80%. Okay, this 80% is actually the revenue that would go to all the delegators. Okay, so it's actually 100% times this, A minus is 20%. And then there's a 1% charge on that commission, on that revenue before it gets distributed to the delegators. So this 0.8 FX will actually be what a validator earns on top of his normal revenue stream. So the validator will get 100 times 20%, okay, self-bonded FX, plus the commission, which is 20.8. And all delegators will get 100 times 80% minus this commission, and this 79.2 FX will get distributed to the delegator pool based on how much FX you staked in the beginning. Okay, so how are fees distributed? You actually, there's based on this pre-commits, okay? Later I will explain more on it. But essentially, if you have the minimum kind of pre-commits you need to make for a block is 2/3. Okay, and anything past that, right, you will earn a bonus, and it ranges from 1% to 5% linearly. Okay, so just to show you a bit of the math, let's say there are 10 validators again, 1% commission rate, 20% of each of the validators self-delegated FX. Okay, and yeah, so then comes a block with a total of 1340 in fees. Okay, before that, actually a 25% tax is applied. Okay, you can check how much tax there is applied. So this actually goes into the reserve fund, for any governance and fund bounties and upgrades. Okay, so 25% tax applied, so 335. And that leaves us, with 1005 FX remaining. Okay, so let's say this validator managed to get a full bonus of 5%. All right, so if let's say there are 10 validators now, so each of them will earn 100, but the validator that actually proposed the block will get 105 FX. Okay, so same rules apply. 105 is the total revenue, and he will apply 1% commission rate on the 80% that goes to the delegators. So this is a commission that will go to the validator later. So the validator's reward will be 105 times 20%, and with an addition of 0.84 FX. Okay, so these are the calculations for non-proposer validator. Okay. So here are some of the slashing conditions. So this is very important for any validators, in our fxcored network. So there are two types of slashing conditions or misbehaviors. One is obviously double signing, and obviously this will not be tolerated. So if you actually do a double signing, and just to reiterate, right, make sure that if you are also running a full node alongside your validator, make sure that both your validator and your full node does not share the same consensus private key. Okay. So if there's double signing involved, it will actually be a 5% slash on all the staked FX. So that includes the self-delegated amount and also on all the delegators who are staked with this validator. And just to add on, validators who double sign will be jailed and cannot be unjailed after. Okay. With regards to downtime, I think some people have some existing validators have asked in the forum, they were a bit worried, oh, if I miss a couple of blocks, does that constitute a downtime, or will I be slashed? So the answer is actually here. So if you miss more than 95% of the last 20,000 blocks, so 20,000 blocks actually, right now we have about 5 seconds per block. So that will constitute 27.7 hours. So they actually get slashed by 0.1%. Okay. And, after a 600-second or 10-minute window, you can actually unjail your validator. Right. So it's almost done. Do delegators need to self-delegate? All right. Okay, I've already answered that. Yeah, so then the rest of the documents here, yeah, I'll just gloss over it and, happy reading. You can print this out and maybe put it under your pillow, and then it'll probably help you with your insomnia. Okay, so that's about 1 minute more before we actually download this file. Okay, so let's go back here. Snapshot guide, sorry. Okay, so after we've actually downloaded this file, we just need to unpack it. Okay, this will also take some time. So let's say, it takes about 2 days to sync up from scratch, from block 1. All right. If it takes about 2 days, what this whole snapshot guide does is that, it cuts your syncing time by at least half. Okay. Just make sure when you are syncing, you actually sync from the a much higher block height instead of 1. Right? Okay, so I'm done. That took quite a while. Okay, so you can see that I've already downloaded this snapshot. Now I'm going to unpack it. So I'm going to unpack it into the .fxcored folder, and I'm going to override the data file. Yeah, so this is what you see. Yeah, you'll be very happy if you see this, because then your code has worked up until this point. Okay, so moving on to more information from me. All right, actually, I think we can skip this step. All right, yes. Okay, so this is like a cooking video. So this is where you put your cake into the oven for 15 minutes. Let's set a timer for 15 minutes. And yeah, I'll be showing you I'll be taking the cake out that's already 15 minutes after the baking process. Okay, let me just switch screens. Give me 1 minute. All right. Okay, so just to let you know, okay, so I've got some questions on YouTube. I'll answer them in a bit. All right, so just to let you know, I've actually run this command. Let me just show you. Cloud setup. Okay, so all these resources are very important, especially fxcored commands. Oh, okay. Sorry, I didn't show this. All right, so especially these commands, right? These are very important resources. So for, if you want to use the testnet, you can actually get, requests for test fx via this link. And, there's a testnet explorer as well. So unfortunately, there's no faucet for mainnet, unlike, Matic, where you can actually get real Matic, on mainnet. So there's no free lunch sadly, in our fxcore ecosystem. Yeah, so cloud setup. Okay, so I already SSH or remote forward into my other instance. Okay, so I have fxcore status. Yeah, voting power 0 and latest block height and catching up is false. Okay, yes, correct. So what I did is that, I actually opened my local host port and I forwarded, into the remote server. Right, so this actually helps you, especially when we are doing the ledger setup, because yeah, you need fxcore stored in your local machine. And that's one way to do it. Okay. So let's move on to setting up a validator. All right. So make sure, that you have your ledger ready as well. Okay, so before setting up, make sure that you've already gone through the full node setup, either by binaries or Docker. And yes, we can start creating a validator. So when we create a validator, make sure that you also have an account. And okay, so now I'll actually be using a ledger. So it's especially good, in crypto to always store your keys offline in a hardware wallet, especially when, you're a validator. Because this is an added layer of security. So let me just plug in my ledger. So let's just jump to the ledger tutorial as well. Okay. Just make sure that you install the ledger Cosmos ledger application and that you have Ledger Live installed on your machine. And also obviously to update your firmware. So once you have that installed already, you can, okay, so now I'll be, obviously you have to connect your ledger to the terminal. So right now I'm actually entering my PIN. Okay, so once I've done that, you have to go into your Cosmos app on the ledger. Okay, so you enter it by pressing both keys. Well, you actually can use any hardware wallet as long as it's compatible with Cosmos. Okay, So essentially what you need to do is that you have this -- ledger flag installed. So just a quick run through about HD wallets, right? If you set up a new even like MetaMask, or if you set up a new ledger, what it'll prompt you to do is that you create a 24 word mnemonic. So this 24 word mnemonic basically, you can spin up multiple accounts. Okay, in this ledger, what you do is that you have this additional -- index flag. So you can have multiple accounts and multiple paths in your using just one mnemonic. Okay, so make sure that this is very, very important. Make sure that you write down your mnemonics, and obviously don't store it anywhere online. And in case of any fire or anything, if you want to leave a legacy, like people having Bitcoin, right? What they did is actually they lost their key forever. So always store a backup in a secure location. And yes, so you'll be creating a key. And okay, so I'll run this command. Okay, always have a notepad out, so it's easier. Okay, so I will name my keys. Oh dear. So I'll name it, let's say, main val. Okay, ledger. Remember to always add the ledger flag and also an index. Okay, index 4. Okay, one thing that is very important, especially with regards to ledger, is that if let's say you have multiple keys in your ledger, make sure that you know which index you have stored your keys in, because you might be overriding or rather renaming your existing keys. Okay, so we'll be using the keyring backend file. Okay, you can either name, there are a few options, which is either file or test. So I'll name it file. Okay, what this does, keyring backend flag, is basically adding an additional layer of security to protect your any keys inside this file. Okay, let me run this. Oh, no ledger connected. That's unfortunate. Oh, sorry. Yeah, this is my remote terminal. I should be running the command here in my local terminal. Okay. So yes, it works. I can see my keys now. Okay, I'll click OK. And yes, this will prompt you for a keyring phrase. So I've already created this keyring backend file. So I already have a keyring passphrase set. All right, so then I've created it. This is using ledger. Okay, so you can see the type is ledger. This is the public key. This is the address. So yeah, I mean, if you want to try to hack this, it's virtually impossible, because how cryptography works. Okay, so I've already created a key. So what I'll do now is that let me just query bank balance. Okay, so I'll explain how to run fxcored. So there are actually a lot of commands within fxcored, and I'll just show you how to do some basic commands and how you can uncover more commands along the way. So the first command is obviously fxcored. So what this does is actually unlocks all the commands, flags, and there's other subcommands as well. So if let's say right now I just want to query my bank balance of this particular. Okay, let me just copy this. Right. So fxcored query, as you can see here, this is one of the commands. Then you list come up with a list of another list of sub commands. Okay, so you can choose, maybe I'll choose bank. Okay, fxcored query bank. Sorry, let's just do this bank. Okay, so this is the usage. You can add in the flags and the commands. Okay, so balances, I need balances. Okay, just to double check what. Okay, sorry, let me just cd out. Okay, just to check what bank balance I have. Okay, bank, and obviously I'll copy this address. Oh, sorry, I missed one key. Bank balances. fxcored query balances, and then I'll input this. All right, so you can see that I have a total of 0 FX. Okay, so I'm really very poor. So for all who are watching in, if you want to contribute, you can contribute to this address. I'll be more than happy. Not delegate, I mean like send. Okay, if you're willing. Okay, so I'll actually use my FX wallet to send some money over. Okay, so this is I mean just an additional step that you should do, especially when you're creating keys, just to send the transactions over, just to make sure that this wallet works and all. So okay, let me send. I'll be sending 5 over. It's 19. Okay, so let me just stop sharing for a bit. All right, so I just copied my address into the FX wallet, and just to show you a real-time transaction. Okay, so transactions. Okay, I'm gonna send 5 over to this address. All right, you can see I just sent 5 from my wallet to this address. Okay, so this is just, a sanity check. And what I'll do now is that I'll actually send it back just in case. Okay, just to confirm on my ledger whether it actually works. So function X Explorer. Okay, let me just copy this address. Oops. Okay, so what I'll do is that I'll be sending a transaction. So going back to this, fxcored, list of commands, then you look. Okay, what are the commands? Fxcored. Hold on. All right. Okay. So, transaction commands, right? So I'm trying to send some money back. Okay. So this opens up a list of sub commands. So fxcored transactions send. Says send or no back. All right. So as you can see here, send funds from flag. Yeah. So if you want to just add a flag, it'll tell you exactly what fields you need to fill. So from address to address. Okay. Oh, sorry, send. Got one more step. Yeah, from key to address and the amount. Okay, so I'm going to build my transaction here. So it's called send. Okay. From okay, I'm just going to copy something. Send rather, okay, so let me just build the transaction. So main val 4, right? That's the from address. And this would be my address or rather. Okay, and I'll be sending over 4,000 FX. So just bear in mind the system actually the system has an 18 decimal place. To the power of 18. So this actually means that it's 4 FX. Okay, so I'll need to add in this guess auto. So you actually can, type in fees, the -- fees field, but I'll prefer this, which is guess auto. So this actually automates the amount of guess involved. And there's a guess adjustment. Okay, so I want this transaction to go through. So I'll add 50% on top of the estimated guess amount. So guess amount is basically, exactly like, Ethereum gas, Like if you do any transaction, this gas actually goes to a validator. Okay, so gas price, I'll set it as 40,000 or whatever number this is, fx. So you can actually run, gas prices, fxcored gas prices to query your current node's gas price. Okay. And because, I'm using a ledger account, so always remember, you have to add this ledger field in. And also, because I've used the keyring backend file, so always remember to add this as well. Okay, so now that I've built this transaction, let me just key it into the system. Okay, so let me enter my keyring. Okay, so this will prompt. And yeah, so I can see it on my ledger right now. So view transaction on the ledger. Step through, make sure everything is correct. Make sure that the chain ID is fxcore. The sequence, the type, send the amount from to fee gas, and then I'll sign the transaction, or you can obviously reject. All right, so I signed the transaction. So just to check, you can use the block explorer. Yeah, I just transferred 4fx from this over. So it's working. So I'll send in the Calvary. Right? Let me send. fx19. Okay, always verify that you're sending to the correct address. So always double check. I know if you look at this a lot, all these hash values, you might suffer from an early onset of rather old eyes. Right, so I've actually sent, yes, you can see, click to refresh, 108 fx. So right now I'll create my validator. Okay. So, before that happens, just want to run you through. So this is fxcored commands. So this is, I've already run through all the validator stuff. Then delegators as well, delegator FAQ is the same as validator FAQ in terms of anything logical and where you can find all the logical explanations to delegators. Delegator CLI guide, that's a technical command line interface guide to what you need to do, like how to set up a wallet, how to use Ledger Live, assessing the core. And there's also the delegator security notice. So just beware of social engineering, phishing, and key management. And for fxcored commands documentation, this is very important. But as I already shown you, how you can actually just type in fxcored, and it'll show you a list of subcommands, and from there you can find your way through. But if not, you can actually take a look at this document. So everything, all the different commands are in here, or all the important commands are in here. Right? Yeah, and then let's create a validator. Okay. So once again, make sure that your fxcored status is set to false. So basically, catching up false means that it's already synced up to the latest block height. And this will be an explanation of what the fields are. All right, so just to make sure that you have certain checks before you actually set up your validator, make sure you run these commands. Okay, so this will actually double confirm that this, your private key will have this corresponding public address. So just a point to note is that all these commands need to be done in the system that you have the validator set up. So if you're remoting or forward remoting from your own local terminal, you are not supposed to run this here. You're actually running it in the remote server. All right. So this is my private key. No, I'm just joking. It's the public key. Okay. And okay, so I'll run this other command. Okay, so just make sure that, put your eyes to the screen. Make sure you go as close as possible to make sure that, you see properly all the different small little letters. And just make sure that, this matches up. Okay, these two values matches up. So it does. Then I'll be running this. This is another layer of check. Okay, so this will be checking your address. Okay, so make sure that, the second to the last block value is the same. So fxvalcons. Okay, this is your private. Okay, so let me just check. All right. Okay, so now that everything is working, I would copy this entire validator setup. Okay, don't know why Mac is doing this to me today. But I would do this. Always, okay, remember, always have your notepad here so that you can make sure that you key in the correct values and you build your transaction. Okay, so just checking. Create validator, that's the correct command. Chain ID is fxcored. Gas auto, gas adjustment, gas prices from main val. Yeah. Ledger keyring backend file, amount is 105. Public key, okay, public key. Okay, I'll run this command to get the public key. Okay, remember to run this in your remote server as well. Okay, so this is my public key. So I'll add it here. Commission. Okay, based on what I've said before, if I lower my commission, more delegators will come. But if I raise my commission, hopefully some not so smart delegators will flock to me as well. So let's say I put it at 0.2%. Max commission rate, max rate change, mean self-delegation. Okay, the moniker, you can choose anything you want. So just to let you know, our company actually has this company's pet called Blind Gochi. And this is the website that you can access to actually feed, bathe, and make it drink some water. Okay. Office. Okay, let's just say office pet. Who let the blind Gochi out? All right. So we have created the transaction. Okay, now that I have stalled for very long, my ledger decided to go on standby. Okay. Now I would copy this command and run the transaction. Oh, did I miss out on anything? Hold on. Let let the blind Kochi out. Just to make sure, once again, put your eyes to the screen and make sure everything is correct. Event not found. I think there's something to do with the white spacing. Event not found. Okay, so there is some issues. Yeah, like like I mentioned before, I mean, there are bound to be human errors. Maybe it's a white spacing issue, but I highly doubt so. Oh my goodness. Okay, that's unfortunate. I think it has to do with this. Event not found. Did I miss out on anything? Okay, so just remember to double check because you can make quite a bit of mistakes here as well. Tell you what, let me just copy this and then I'll redo it. All right. Okay, main val1 for chain ID fxcored. Mount, let's copy this, 105 fx. Copy this as well. This is a public key. Commission rate, Monica, choose a Monica. Let's just say blind Gochi. I think it has to do with the website. Not too sure. Okay, so I won't change the website. I'll see whether that works. You know, after that, I can always edit it. There's a cache tag before the public key. Cache tag before the, oh, right. Is that it? Nope. I don't think that's it. Hold on. Well, I think. Oh, right. Okay, I know what's the reason. I think. Let me just copy this. Nope. Yeah, okay. Let me just try to figure this out. Oh, right. Okay. I think it works now. Amount not set. But my amount is set. Oh dear. Keys required, amount not set. I think it has to do with the double white spacings. Amount. This is getting frustrating. All right, okay. I think this works. Okay, so yes, I think I managed to troubleshoot it. So, you know, let me see what's the error. All right, okay, so there's some trouble with ledger. Okay, okay, let me just reconnect my ledger. Okay, I'm getting an error. Let me just reconnect my ledger. Okay, so there might be wide spacing issues. Okay, so hopefully this will work this time. 10th time's the charm. Oh my, what is wrong? Staking create validator. Error length response. Okay, so usually if this happens is something wrong with the connection between ledger and the command. Okay, I got quite a lot of encouragement from the audience. Oh geez. I think maybe there's not enough effects inside. Just make sure if that's the problem with it. Oh. Specified item could not be found in the key ring. Okay. Oh gosh. Okay, tell you what, I'm just gonna. Okay, I'm going to stop this first, and I'm just gonna copy what I have before. Hold on, give me a second. Okay, just give me a minute. Let me just. Okay. Okay, so the rule of thumb is that, the 10th or the 100th time is the charm. So hopefully this will work. Let me just double check my validator. Okay, so this looks correct. Okay, so let me just run this. Okay. I think there's an issue with my ledger. Oh, right. Okay, good. Yes. So there's an issue with my ledger. So yeah, just want to confirm. Sign transaction. All right, so I've actually created a validator. So just checking. Success. All right, hold on. No, this is not mine. Create validator. Yes, finally. So there might be, issues with a ledger, for example. And yeah, you can see, let me just pull this out. And I can see my validator somewhere here. Okay, yes. So yes, that's a success. Yeah, before we end this technical session, I'll just like to pull up. Let me see. I mean, in the interest of time. No. Yeah. Okay. So, I mean, if you want to set up a node monitor, which I think is very, very important, well, you can basically see it looks something like this. Okay. Alert manager. So this will actually alert whenever your status actually goes offline. So just to point out as well, you can link this to your Telegram, so you can get alerts on your Telegram. And yeah, the dashboard for your node validator will look something like this. So once you have set it up, in the this node matrix, right? Once you've already created, you've already pulled your Docker image in and you've already set that up, it looks something like this. And click manage. Okay, I think everything is dying on me today. Even my most trustable ledger. Hopefully this doesn't die on me as well. And while we are waiting for this guy to slowly boot up, I'll just run you through a bit on sentry nodes. So sentry nodes are basically, linked to your validator. So right now, if you set up your validator, the internet can actually query your validator directly. So what this kind of exposes your validator is a DDoS attack. So if you create a sentry node, the internet will actually start querying the sentry nodes. So you have to configure that for your validator. And that is like a one layer of protection against anything outside in the internet. Right? So yes. Let me just sign in. Right, so you can see you click on this dashboard in this dashboard manage, and you look something like that. Okay, so you can add your targets into your validator, into this node matrix, so you can have more than one validator. And you can see, you adjust the refresh rate, the last hours. And I can see I'm connected to 8 peers now. And let's just see, oh, I've missed 29 blocks in the last 6 hours. So just remember, this is not very alarming. So as long as you don't miss more than 95% of the blocks within a 27-hour interval, then you're fine. Okay. Yeah, so I've added this information, on read delegation inside the Gitbook as well. So yeah, everything, all the information that you need will be in there. So yeah, let's end the technical session here. So yeah, I'll be opening up the floor to any questions for maybe about 10 to 20 minutes. Let me see some of the questions. Okay, so someone actually asked on Twitter, what's the environment that you need. So basically, I would strongly recommend, choosing the environment of either maybe a Mac or Ubuntu or Linux terminal, right? And right now, the one that I just set up is on, I think version 20. Yeah, the latest version. Let me see what my 20.04. All right. And so right now, I don't think you need 500 GB of storage, but I think that's a good amount to start with, because every day there's an increase of maybe about 1 GB of storage as needed. Okay. Okay, let me just look at any other questions. All right, I think there's no more questions. So we can call it a day. And